Kính thưa quý vị, qua cuộc hành quân của cảnh sát tại Trung tâm Thương mại Eden vào ngày 11 tháng 8 năm 2011, một vấn đề liên quan đến quyền hiến định được đặt ra cho cộng đồng người Mỹ gốc Việt, không những tại địa phương Hoa Thịnh Đốn, mà còn trên toàn cõi Hoa Kỳ. Đó là quyền căn bản của mọi người, tiếng Mỹ gọi là Maranda Rights. Được biết, trong cuộc hành quân của cảnh sát tại Trung tâm Thương mại Eden, một số nghi can đã không được cảnh sát lưu ý về Maranda Rights. Vậy, Maranda Rights là quyền gì? Thưa quý vị, Maranda Rights là quyền như sau. Khi một nghi can về hình sự bị bắt giữ và trước khi cảnh sát mở cuộc thẩm vấn, cảnh sát có bổn phận phải nói rõ với nghi can hai điều sau đây. Thứ nhất, nghi can có quyền giữ im lặng, không trả lời các câu hỏi, vì những câu trả lời của nghi can sẽ được đưa ra tòa và có thể gây bất lợi cho chính nghi can. Thứ hai, nghi can được quyền có luật sư và luật sư sẽ hiện diện trong lúc bị thẩm vấn. Nếu không đủ tài chính để mướn luật sư, nghi can sẽ được cung cấp luật sư miễn phí. Vào ngày 17 tháng Giêng năm 2012, Hiệp hội Thương mại Người Mỹ gốc Việt vùng Hoa Thịnh Đốn cùng với một số chủ nhân thương mại người Việt tại Eden đã đi Richmond, thủ phủ của tiểu bang Virginia, để vận động cho dự luật mà Maranda Rights phải được cảnh sát lưu ý bằng Việt ngữ và các ngôn ngữ khác ngoài Anh ngữ. Qua nhiều lần liên lạc và vận động, dự luật này đã được ông Mark Kim, dân biểu địa hạt thứ 35 của tiểu bang Virginia, phối hợp với Hiệp hội Thương mại cùng soạn thảo và tiểu bang định chế của Hạ viện Virginia đưa ra thảo luận và biểu quyết trong phiên nhóm ngày 25 tháng Giêng năm 2012. Dân biểu Mark Kim là người Mỹ gốc Nam Hàn. Sau đây là vài hình ảnh ghi nhận khi phái đoàn đến Hạ viện, Thượng viện và chia thành nhiều toán để vận động các nhà lập pháp. Sau đó, phái đoàn đến phòng họp của Asian Pacific American Policy and Research Forum để trình bày vấn đề đã xảy ra tại Trung tâm Thương mại Eden và kêu gọi sự hỗ trợ của cơ quan này. Hiện diện trong buổi họp có rất nhiều các thành viên thuộc Hội đồng Cố vấn người Mỹ gốc Á Châu.
Hôm nay đó mình vô đó vô cái phòng đó mình không có cần nói cái gì hết, mình đứng đó không á, người ta thấy mặt của một người cộng đồng Việt Nam giống vậy đó là người ta biết là mình có tiếng rồi, người ta hiểu là mình biết luật lệ, người ta hiểu là mình xuống đây là mình biết làm sao thay đổi chính phủ để làm việc cho mình, chứ không mình không có vào yêu cầu nữa mà mình đòi hỏi đó là tại sao chính phủ không có bảo vệ một cộng đồng Việt Nam. Đó là cái đó là cái
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Oh, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Great breakfast.
Okay.
So, she's from the Vietnamese media from Fairfax County.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, as I was sharing with Senator Chet Peterson's about he's asking about the raid. So,
Yeah.
we want to use that as a step. So, we want to move forward and create better.
Right.
This is, where we can come in.
Are there enough, I don't know if there are enough, are there any Vietnamese-speaking police officers for Falls Church?
Nobody.
They're not.
No, we need one.
Have they tried to recruit one?
Well, I don't know if they
That
do.
seems like an issue right
Yes.
there.
Recruiting, training, those are all issues.
Right.
Dialogue, we ask for community policing. The raid is definitely a catalyst for the
Yeah.
community coming together, and
Seems
it's
like
a good thing.
they could assign, for example, maybe a beat police officer who's there every day, because he would know who's there, who doesn't belong there, and maybe that would be a better way. I mean, otherwise, unless...
And the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce and the tenants were willing to help, community policing.
Right.
Because it's a small community, we know everybody.
Right.
So, but if they don't come in, they don't work with us, they don't treat us the way that we're supposed to be treated with respect.
Right.
Respect is mutual. They don't do that. Sometimes you see police officers, how you doing? They just pull their hand, they don't shake your hand. And we're like, wait a minute, what's going on? Why are you here?
Right.
The thing is, the Eden Center is a very small issue when
Right.
you look at the entire Commonwealth
Right.
of Virginia. And one of the things that we're looking at in the Commonwealth as a trade association is not just the Eden Center issues. I mean, we have the 2 legislation that we're trying to push forward right now. That's the Miranda Rights, and then we got the issue concerning transparency in the CAM for commercial leases. But just beyond that, some of the things that you're going to hear from us in the future as a chamber is international trade efforts, trade missions, working with the State Department, Department of Commerce, things that you were talking about.
Tell me about your bill on Miranda rights.
Bill on Miranda Rights. Just basically, we don't want to stop exigent circumstances where the police comes out and arrests them. Certainly, we want crime stopped. Bill on Miranda Rights, we just want to be able to make sure that people know the due process once there's time to do it. So if you're going to book someone, take them in, pick up that phone, and get a translator on the line if they don't understand it. If it's going to be, if you're not certain, put it in writing. And this works both sides. That way, when you go to court, you know the evidence is good. Because it's in writing.
Are there translators 24/7 to pick this up?
On the phone, I used to use it all the time. I used to use 24/7 translator. They're available around the nation. So it's not a high-cost item. And plus, the conviction rate should be high, because you know the due process is going to be preserved. Now, for our cases, with the Dragon family and the whole gambling matter, I filed a number of motions, pre-trial motions. Most of them were granted in our acquittal.
Want to suppress any confessions.
Exactly. So why do that? Why waste all that money in prosecution when it can be clear, it can be written, and everybody can understand it? So there's nothing to hide, you know, from the government.
Sounds like you got a good result for your clients on that one.
16 out of 18 acquitted or dismissed, but it's just a start for us.
Good.
But that's also to say that our fight's not political. That's yours.
Well,
ours is to support you.
I'm also a lawyer too,
so that you can help us.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, guys. Well, I'm happy to help you. Vietnamese community has been very good to me. I've knocked on a lot of doors, and actually, you know, I grew up in Fairfax, and I remember when the boat people came over in the 70s. Got it, Alex?
Yep. Wonderful. Thanks.
Got it. Good work. Okay. Thank you for coming to visit.
The government contracting for small businesses, this diversity in supplier.
Vietnamese American Chamber of Commerce, if you guys want to say a couple of things.
Thank you. My name is Dwayne Frame of the Chamber Council. Along with me today is the president of the Vietnamese American Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Ben Nguyen. We come here today on, unfortunately, different tidings. We come here en masse because we are an upset group. And we have been upset in the Commonwealth of Virginia for many years. But because of our timidness and humility, we have been quiet. As Asian American, and specifically Vietnamese American, we do not share all the problems that the Commonwealth have today. The majority of the people here, unlike Virginia, are employed. We're employed because we own our own businesses. We are not necessarily the most educated group. We have our PhDs, we have our doctorates, we have our attorneys. But we also have uneducated entrepreneurs that create jobs, pay taxes, and do more for the Commonwealth than those that are currently employed. We are a silent crowd in that we don't always ask and demand for human rights when we should. When the Washington Post or 11 Media and 17 Agency comes to the Eden Center to raid us on false charges, we were quiet until we spoke up in protest and found our own justice in the court system that was unbearing. It's unbearing because, unfortunately, we are not represented. We're not represented in the judicial system. We're not represented in commerce as we should be. We're not represented on many fronts of the government at the higher echelon of the government. We are here today because we would like to make a difference. We would like to start by understanding the government. By understanding the government, we hope to trust the government. These are words of our founding fathers. We are here today because we want to show unity. We are here today because through eradication of discrimination and having a voice that can be heard, we shall change the way the business model is done to improve not just the Vietnamese American community, but Virginia and this nation at large, and pull us out of this recession. Through jobs, through employment, through tax revenues, we're here to help our government make a difference. Not by standing silent anymore, but by coming together with one unified voice. Thank you.
But because of the immigration history is still short, we still have a lot of room to improve on as far as our public participation, community participation is concerned. I think good things would happen for Asian communities because we are becoming more aware of the fact that more involvement is what's required. Under our agency, we have something called VIAD, Virginia Israeli Advisory Board. It's an agency. You know, why is this an agency? Okay, for Israeli community, if you bring Israeli technology.
Election year is pretty easy to know what to do. First, we have to fulfill our responsibility as citizens is to go vote. So whoever is not registered, you have to register so that we can vote. That really is the one of the ways in order to voice our opinion and to gain the control that we need for our own community. So please register to vote. And secondly, do you get...
We may talk about community policing in the context of the general population that we have, but I understand that Northern Virginia has a much larger Asian American population, so it's incumbent upon organizations like the Vietnamese American Chamber of Commerce to reach out to the law enforcement agencies.
Vào ngày 25 tháng Giêng, các thành viên Hiệp hội Thương mại lại đi Richmond lần nữa để yểm trợ dân biểu McKim khi ông trình bày dự luật trước tiểu bang định chế. Sau đây là diễn tiến cuộc thảo luận về dự luật liên quan đến Maranda Rights tại tiểu bang định chế của Hạ viện Virginia.
All right, Delegate King, you said you have one easy, one hard, in the order you prefer.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the members. The other one is House Bill 1048, and let me start by saying that I have never practiced criminal law, and I certainly have not studied this issue as well as members of this committee. So I'm going to ask for your guidance and advice on this, and I'm also not familiar with what our state has done in this area in terms of language assistance for the criminal justice system. But this specific bill deals with the Maranda Rights and the Miranda warnings. There was an incident that was brought to my attention, and I have some gentlemen here from Fairfax County who could speak about their particular instance, which is the reason why I decided to put the bill in. But generally speaking, the idea of dealing with people in the community who don't speak English, who are not familiar with the English language because of their immigrant status and such. And when the police encounters them, there are obviously times of language barriers. Many times that may be dealt with by court interpreters and such, but in the context of Miranda rights, it seemed to us that the most fundamental right that a person who is about to be arrested and interrogated by the police, when that person who doesn't speak English is told certain rights, and yet they don't understand that those rights mean something to them, and they start talking maybe in broken English, and that those words are then used against them in court, we thought that there might be a fundamental injustice in that process. And so what the bill that we drafted basically would require that when a police officer or the law enforcement is in the process of arresting, and prior to the questioning, which is of course when Miranda Rights has a meeting, prior to the questioning, that they question that person, if the person is obviously not an English speaker, to find some way, either in oral, in writing, in some other way, to make sure that that person understands that they have Miranda Rights before they continue the questioning. And you all are the experts in this area, but I think this has benefits for the law enforcement as well, and that if you don't get the Miranda Rights properly, I mean, a lot of that information could end up possibly backfiring, and the law enforcement not be able to go forward with their case. I do know that the American Bar and other organizations have been looking at these issues for the last several years, trying to find out some standards that might apply, and I know there have been some translation issues in terms of how do you specifically translate the Miranda Rights, because the Miranda warnings themselves are not necessarily given uniformly across the country. So I do understand that this is a tough policy matter, but considering the demographic changes that we're facing, especially in Northern Virginia, we thought that this was about time that we address this Miranda Rights. I think it's really important that our state does this right. Mr. Chairman, if it's possible, I'd like to ask some of our witnesses who came down from Fairfax County to be able to speak. Mr. Chairman,
We're going to let the public testify before we...
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, yes, some witnesses. Please have them step up, identify yourself, tell us your feelings about the bill. If there's a large number, try to tell us how your thoughts are different than the previous person. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
Members of the subcommittee. My name is Dwayne Tran. I represent the Vietnamese American Chamber of Commerce for the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. We're located in headquarters in Falls Church, Virginia.
Sir, just a second.
We're located in Falls Church, Virginia, the county of Fairfax. With me today, we have taken a trip, and other members of the chamber and the business community from that area has come down here. This is a very important matter for the Chamber of Commerce because it directly impacts business. The Miranda warning works to assure, from what we understand, two fundamental items. One is the presumption of innocence that remains to have it remain paramount in our judicial system, and the second is to not force any type of self-incrimination. The warning empowers the individual with the knowledge necessary to assure the trust and confidence in the government, and the government will not wrongfully arrest any innocent people. It basically protects the Constitution. This has an effect not just on the individual, but on the businesses. Today we're here because on August 11, 2011, a task force that included 17 agencies, both local and federal, that included 60 law enforcement officers, with after securing 13 search warrants, according to the Falls Church News Press, came and raided an ethnic shopping center called the Eden Center. This was a Vietnamese predominant business-owned shopping center. What had happened was the news press and the news release incited
Is this a is there a pending case, or is this all happened?
No, this has already been, from what we understand, has already been resolved through the judicial system. They had alleged that Dragon families, organized crimes, different entities had somehow set up a gambling ring at the Eden Center. Of the arrest warrants that were issued, most of them were customers that just frequented there were cafe shops. And I believe 16 out of the 19 or 20 that were arrested, the results were acquittal or dismissals. Often enough, the dismissals or acquittal had been a situation where the individuals were held in place in the shopping stores for over 14 hours, at which time no Miranda rights were given. No one understood why the police were there. They were trying to communicate with the police, and there were some huge misunderstanding between both the community and the police. This fractured the trust that the patrons, the business community, and the police had in this area. The Miranda warnings, if it were understood, certainly it's our feeling by the Chamber of Commerce that both the business community and the individuals would have clearly spoke to the police during the investigative process and clarified the situation in the Eden Center and in Falls Church. There's no issue that there is a gambling problem here in Falls Church, but that's not because of the business owners. This is a complaint that the community wanted to work with the police for a number of years. The gambling and organized gambling is advertised on the front page of ethnic newspaper. And the community has been screaming at law enforcement to stop this. And they just refuse to look at it and really discuss this item.
We don't want to cut you off, but we're only a third of the way through our docket, and we've been here for several hours. And what I would ask you, if there's something specific to the bill, why this bill's a good idea, which I gather you support it. If there's anything else you want to tell us, we'd be happy to hear it.
I just want to say, according to the 2010 census, 10% of the population here in Virginia, of 8 million, will be affected by this bill. That's about 800,000 individuals. Not all of them are going to be arrested, but if they are stopped or arrested, they would at least understand the fundamental rights of this country. And the languages would include Spanish, Korean, Vietnamese, and Filipino. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming. Delegate Kim, you're welcome to bring other people that like to speak. If
I think that was it. We have people, but they're from the same group. So.
Okay. All right, does anyone like to speak against the bill?
Attorneys are against it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Commonwealth Attorneys Office Association is against this bill. You want to tell us why?
Your Honor,
I'm sorry, I've been told it.
the Constitution already has these protections for these individuals. In order for them, for any statement that they make to be used, they have to knowingly and voluntarily waive their right to the Fifth Amendment rights. If they aren't provided with those warnings in a language that they understand, we will not be able to use those statements. What this will do is for an individual who speaks English, who comes in and is being investigated by James City County Police, if we did not determine ahead of time that his native language was something that we were unaware of, if we did not advise him of his Miranda warnings in that native language, we wouldn't be able to use those statements, even though we had no idea that because his English was fine, but his native language was Pakistani. This would be a completely unmanageable bill for law enforcement.
Okay. You want to speak on the bill? Mr. Carr, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Dan Wilson, I'm with the State Police. Thank you to the delegate for meeting with us beforehand to discuss our concerns. On the way over here, before I got here, I looked up how many languages there are. There are approximately 6,900 languages. And as most police officers use their cars as their offices, this would require us to carry around these languages. And as the Attorney General's office mentioned, if I am arresting someone who may be from France but who is an English professor in this country, this bill, as I understand it, would require us to read him Miranda warnings in French. Thank you.
Mr. Carr.
Dwayne Carr, Virginia Fraternal Order of Police, retired police officer. And the thing that bothers me is the wording of this is when we place someone under arrest. Miranda says if we go to question that individual, we read him his rights. That I agree with. However, if I have a warrant for someone and I'm not going to ask them any questions, I don't have to read them their rights. I'm serving paperwork and taking them before the magistrate. And an officer, just like was stated, in a vehicle is not going to have the capability of knowing all these languages for whoever they happen to run into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Okay.
Sure. Could I just, if it's appropriate, can I just respond to?
Well, let's see what I think the members of the committee probably have some questions. We will give you the last word. All right. So, members of the committee, subcommittee. Delegate Morris has his hand up. Well, that's going to be the last word. Do you have questions? Delegate Gilbert, did you want to ask any questions? Okay. That's a debatable motion, so that's fine. So the motion is made to PBI. Is there a second? Okay. It allows 2 minutes of debate for and against. Keem, go ahead.
Sure. A couple of things. I appreciate the concerns of the law enforcement, and this is certainly not a measure designed to make the law enforcement's work any harder. And if you read the language carefully, even though we talk about the arrest, the key provision here is prior to any questioning happens, which is the current law. So what we're trying to do is capture that time before the interrogation happens. That's when the Miranda Rights is supposed to be given. So we're not creating a new time for the Miranda Rights to be given, so we're not changing the substance of that. And in terms of the native language, perhaps the bill wasn't drafted carefully, where we shouldn't have used the word native. I think the idea is, you know, if you speak French, but you also speak English, then clearly you are an English speaker and understand it. The idea here is to get to those people who are limited in English capacity. So if it's a matter of changing the language, I'd be happy to come back with a new version. But the final point, I think, is that there are times and places, and I think in some jurisdictions across the country, they now have written versions, they have cards that they carry around, as well as by phone and by internet. You have a lot more access to translators, especially when you have some time. So if you brought somebody back to the station, and before the interrogation happens, before the questioning happens, during that time, we're talking about having that language accessible. So you're not driving around with boxes and boxes of different languages of Miranda Rights, and that's certainly not the intent of this bill.
On that point, I mean, the remedy would be that the statement doesn't come in, right?
That's right.
Because, I mean, if he said something in the squad car like I did it, that statement would not come in.
If the questioning was involved without the proper Miranda Rights. In other words, if somebody just confesses that they're speaking in English and they're confessing, that's one thing. But if
the cop says what happened, and he says I did it, if the cop reads in Miranda in English, this bill passes, he says, yeah, I did it, or whatever, I killed her. What you're saying is that statement would not come in.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in that context, it seems to me that that person is fluent in English. So I don't think that this language, that this provision would affect that. The idea here is for those people who are, just aren't able to articulate themselves in English or understand or comprehend the fact that they have rights. I mean, those are the types of people we're trying to protect. And so I don't think that we're in a situation where somebody who casually speaks English and is fluent enough to be able to communicate that gravity of, yeah, I killed this person. I don't think we're trying to protect or exonerate a real criminal from being tried based on this language. We're not trying to create any new substantive laws. All we're trying to do is reflect the laws and the law enforcement capacity in the context of the changing demographic of this Commonwealth.
Motion's been made and seconded to PBI the bill. All in favor of the motion, PBI, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, noes, raise your hand. One. Okay. The measure is passed. Thank you, Delegate King.
Okay, mình mới xong cái General Assembly, mình lên cái subcommittee để cho thay đổi cái luật lệ của cái Maranda Rights để cho họ dùng nhiều tiếng hay là mấy cái tiếng khác để cho họ biết về cái Maranda Rights. Mà bây giờ đó là coi giống như họ sẽ không có thay đổi cái luật đó. Xong bây giờ mình có cái hy vọng để làm việc thêm nữa để cho người ta hiểu biết về cái vấn đề của người Việt Nam mà đụng chạm với cảnh sát để cho họ hiểu là cũng có người ở ngoài quốc mà họ phải Mỹ nó kêu là cater to từng mà họ lo mấy cái chuyện law enforcement bên mình.
Về cái Maranda Rights tuy nhiên cái luật nó không có thay đổi nhưng mà chúng ta nên làm việc với những cái local đồn cảnh sát để mà làm sao để bảo vệ chung cho người Việt Nam. Cái quan trọng là ngày hôm nay người Việt Nam chúng ta cũng đã ra đây và cũng đem những cái issue này để cho chính quyền họ hiểu là những cái vấn đề này nó cũng ảnh hưởng tới cộng đồng Việt Nam rất là nhiều. Tuy người Việt Nam chúng ta chưa được cái luật nó đã dịch vào tiếng Việt mà quý vị nên coi cái luật, tại vì mình ở đây mình có cái quyền để bảo vệ mình thì quý vị nên tìm hiểu cái luật Maranda Rights để mà mình hiểu được cái quyền của mình lúc mà mình bị cảnh sát thưa hỏi.
Kính thưa quý vị, để hiểu rõ hơn về quyền Maranda Rights, chúng tôi sẽ trở lại vấn đề này trong thời gian sắp tới. Chương trình phỏng vấn và tìm hiểu xin kính chào quý vị và xin hẹn quý vị trong chương trình kỳ tới.